Hey, hello, everyone. This is criminal profiler Pat Brown, and this is Hangout number 62. And there is a lot to talk about. Oh, my gosh, there's so much to talk about. And, of course, everybody's sitting here going, what about Delphi? Because all the news broke on Delphi last Friday that they'd arrested somebody. And then on Monday, Delphi police had the press conference, and they stated that they had charged Richard Allen, a guy that worked at the CVS as a pharmacy tech. They arrested him and charged him with 2 counts of murder. So let me say hello to everybody first who's in the chat room. Hello, everybody. I see you all were in there. So I was like, I got to get to you guys. By the way, if you'd like to be in the chat room on any of the Hangouts or the live shows, the case live shows, and participate with this wonderful community, click below on Patreon, join. It supports the channel. And it's just $5 a month to participate in everything. So before I start, I just noticed a weird glitchy thing. So can you tell me whether you can see and hear me? Because we had problems last time and I had to start the show over. So let me know if I'm out of sync and you can't see me and it's blurry. Let me know that, because we did have problems last time. I don't know why, what was going on with you can see and hear me perfectly. That's one. What about the rest of you? Because I just saw a glitch. So, all right, okay, cool. Everybody says good. All right, let's hope it stays that way, because you know, okay. Everybody says cool. All right, let me say hello to everybody now. Let me roll back here. Hi, Anna's here. Martin is here. He's still awake. He's in the UK, so it's midnight. Angela's here. Let's see who else is here. Benny is here, and he's still awake, and it's 1 o'clock in the morning for you, Benny. What are you doing awake? Florence is here. I don't know if I said Angela already. Michaela's here. And Christiane. Do I say your name right, Christiane? Or is it Kristen? How do you say your name? Can you just do that in little phonics things at the bottom? I want to say your name right, and I'm not sure I'm doing it. Mary is here. Nancy is here. Who else is in here? Anybody else? Carrie's here. And I'm going to miss somebody, but if you come in now, maybe I'll see you come in and I can say hello to you. What? Real? It's 11 p.m. The clocks have changed? Really? Aren't they supposed to change here too? I'm confused now. All right. Well, I'm glad you can all see me. Now, let me go to just some basic information and news. But before I do that, I just want to go and mention this is coming up supposedly, because it was supposed to be here last spring, but apparently it wasn't. So anyway, this thing is called, it's on the CBS reality show series. It's called Descent of a Serial Killer. It talks about how serial killers, get into the situation that they're in, how they become serial killers, and all of that. And this former FBI agent, who I do not know who she is. I'm in her show, apparently. I did 5 of the shows. They never told me what the name of the show was, so I just found out. And it's starting supposedly this Sunday. I don't know whether that's one I'm in or not, but just to let you know, I don't know how good the series is, because I just did my interview part, and you never know how they weave that in. But I'm hoping it's going to be a good series about how serial killers become serial killers and how they progress in their serial homicides. So check it out. Put in CBS reality Descent of a Serial Killer, and I'm not actually sure where it is. And especially if you're not in this country, I don't know if you can see it. So, but I want to let you know that I'm going to be in those shows. So anyway, well, okay, wait a minute. So it's French. You have it just right. Christiane? Okay. I'm hoping. I hate mispronouncing people's names, but I can't hear them, so it's so weird. Unless you do one of the phone-ins, then I'll know what your name sounds like. All right, so now, what about Delphi? I was asked, am I going to talk about Delphi? All right. No. Why am I not going to talk about Delphi? And in case you don't know, again, this is Abby and Libby. These were the two beautiful girls who were murdered almost 6 years ago. Teenage girls. They went for a walk near in this park with this really creepy high bridge. And this guy was walking over the bridge, and he said to the girls, down the hill. And one of the girls actually filmed this. And that's how we know what the guy looked like, basically, sort of. It was, not clear, and his head was down. And everybody had guesses at who could it possibly be. And so fingers were pointed for 6 years, especially in the internet shows that won't stop. And but on Friday, they arrested this guy. Name is Richard Allen. And if you actually look at him compared to the guy walking across the bridge, sure does look like him. So I'm going to say, looks like they have the right guy. I just want to preface this by saying, before I say anything else, he is innocent until proven guilty. And a lot of people are saying, well, maybe I don't think he is the guy. I think he's a patsy. I think he's, somebody stitched him up. I'm like, as hard as they've worked on this case, they're not going to do that. They're not going to make a mistake, and they're not going to arrest somebody without solid evidence. This guy is a family man. He has a wife and a daughter who works in town. Everybody knows him when they come into CVS. Hi, how you doing? They're not going to pick him. He's got no criminal record. They're not going to pick him if they're going to stitch somebody up. They're going to find somebody super creepy. And they already have some super creepy people they can already stitch up. So why would they do that with this guy? So I'm going to say, chances are they have the right guy. Now, one of the other things I said about the guy was that whoever committed the crimes of Delphi and killed the two teenage girls is a serial killer. And I've gotten a lot of flack on that because people say, well, how do you know that? There's no proof he's a serial killer. Why would you say that? All right. The reason I say that is when the guy's walking over the bridge and he's walking along and he comes to the girls and he says, down the hill. Now, to get them to go down the hill, he has to have a gun or a large knife or something to make them go down the hill. Otherwise, the guy was like 40 something. I'm thinking two teenage girls. If some guy just tells you to do that and he doesn't have a weapon, you might not cooperate as much. But if they've got a weapon, you do. So the minute he said that to the girls, they looked him right in the face. And he's from town. I don't know if they knew who he was, but they sure would be able to give a great description and identify him. So he knew the minute he said down the hill to those girls, he was going to kill them. So some people say, oh, was it something saying he planned to rob them or he planned to just, I don't know, corral them someplace and do some whatever. I'm like, no, he planned to kill them the minute he said those words. And so this is a premeditated homicide of two teenage girls. That's a serial killer. And I don't know exactly what he did to them, but I'm going to say it was a sexual homicide, at least one. Could be sexual homicides, but sometimes they'll target two girls only because they want one. They'll use the other girl to get the first one to cooperate, the one that they want. Or they'll just, they can kill one and then just take care of the other the way they want to. So I'm going to say, I don't know if there was rape involved, but the sexual homicide doesn't have to be rape. Okay. So it can be other stuff. And so I don't know what that is, but my belief is it was a sexual homicide or two. And he's a serial killer, the guy who committed the crimes, not necessarily Richard Allen until it's proven to be so. Serial killer. And so one of the things, other things people said to me was, we don't know that he's ever committed any other crimes. Well, that's true, but that's only because we haven't caught him at anything, probably. He's gotten away with it for years, like many, many serial killers do. And when you catch them when they're 50, you find out that they've been killing women for 3 decades. So doesn't mean he's not a serial killer because we don't know if he's done anything before. And also, the kind of crime makes it a serial homicide type crime. And I'm going to give you 2 examples of that. And so I'm going to do that tonight. Now, before I do the 2 examples, and these were both requested examples, not for this case, but for other reasons. And I thought this was good to go after the Delphi information. On Sunday, I'm going to do 2 shows. Okay, I'm going to do our regular show, and I'm not sure of the time yet. It's going to be, hold on a second, let me find the show I'm going to be doing for our regular show. It is the murder of, let me get his name straight here. The murder of, hold on a second, David Carter, 39-year-old David Carter. Very, very kind of fascinating crime, horrifying crime. And there is a, what did I see this on? 48 Hours. I think I saw it on 48 Hours. I'm going to link that over to you with the show. So I'm going to do that on Sunday. But also on Sunday, I'm going to be taping a quite long show answering questions people have about Delphi, Richard Allen, and serial killers. Because after I did my 10-minute video on Friday and my 20-minute video on Monday, I have been inundated. Those two kind of went semi-viral. And thank you all all these people for subscribing to the channel, because yes, I did go over 10,000 finally. So, and my channel needs the support. So I'm really happy about that. And quite a few of the people who now subscribed are actually looking at all the other videos and enjoying the channel, not just the Delphi case. And I'm appreciating that, because, this is an educational channel, and I don't, do a gossip channel with 50 shows on the same case. So I'm appreciative when people are interested in criminal profiling and crime scene analysis. And they're doing that. They're going to the different shows, and I'm seeing comments everywhere about the other videos. However, I've had so many comments on the 2 videos on Delphi. I'm trying to return answer comments, and I'm running out of energy because there's so many. And then I thought, I should just do a show, and I'm going to pick out all the top questions that people have had. Questions I think that they really would love to understand. And I'm going to do a whole show with like maybe 50 questions and go through a whole list of the different questions people have been asking. So I'm going to do that. Probably put that up on Sunday evening, but we'll do our regular show before that during the day, and then I'll put that up in the evening. So just want to let you know what's coming up. I think it's going to be really interesting, and I just really want to answer everybody, and I just can't keep repeating myself comments under the video, and it's just gotten out of hand. So that's what I'm going to do on Sunday. So yeah, so that's the plan. Hi, Lisa. Lisa S is here too, and Angela is here, and who else is? Oh, you watched this one, the To Be Scream show thing. Yeah, I was kind of shocked it was about the movie Scream, but I did do a lot of discussion of the serial killer Danny Rowling. So that was what I was there for. So, all right, now let's get to the 2 killers I want to talk about in sort of relation to Delphi, just what is a serial killer. So the first one was my request from Benny. Yes, Benny, I'm doing your request. So I try, when you're patrons, I try to honor your requests. I do. So I'm going to talk about this fellow, or no longer fellow, because he's now become a woman. So it gets a little confusing here. This is Harvey. I don't know. I really don't know how to pronounce his name. Marcelin. I believe it's Harvey Marcelin. He was born in 1938, and he is considered an American octogenarian serial killer from Brooklyn, New York City. An octogenarian, he's 80s, and so he just he doesn't stop killing when he's older. And I want to point out that yes, you could be pretty old and still kill. This is why I object when people say, "Oh, let's let them out on a geriatric release. They're 67 years old," and I'm thinking, I'm 67 years old. I could kill somebody. I wouldn't, but I think I'm strong enough to be able to accomplish it, even without a gun. You know what I mean? So I'm like, this guy's in his 80s, and he accomplished it. So I believe when you get life in prison for horrific murder, you ought to stay there. You should stay there. So anyway, they call him a serial killer. I don't see him as a serial killer. Now, he's killed 3 times. And what is the definition of a serial killer? Now, the old FBI definition, which I always objected to, was 3 kills with downtime in between. And I'm always like, why do you have to have 3? I mean, if you like killing people, 2 should be enough to prove that you do it more than once. And even if you do it just once, if you cross the line to a sexual homicide, to rape and murder somebody, probably you've done it before. You're going to do it sometime, but we just haven't caught you yet. And you'll have more than one in your history. But Harvey killed 3 people. Why do I not really think of him as a serial killer, even if he killed 3 people with downtime? Well, his downtime was mostly prison, but but there's a reason for this. And so I want to discuss the differences between the thinking of a serial killer, what I consider a serial killer, and the thinking of a person who's just, I don't know, what do you want to call him? A horrible, violent creature. Okay? That's what I would call Harvey. Who doesn't want to be called Harvey anymore? He's now going to be called, what's his new name? It's somewhere here. But anyway, who is Harvey? Okay. He, when he was 14 years old, he attempted to rape an 8-year-old. And get this one, he subsequently received counseling from the Catholic Charities USA. I'm sorry, what? Okay. But anyway, I guess he just got some counseling. I don't know if he ever raped any other little children. Now, if he did rape people, if he went out in the community and he hunted down children and raped them, I would call him a serial rapist. And if he killed any of them, I'd call him a serial killer. I don't know where this 8-year-old girl was. I have a feeling that Harvey just took advantage of anything that he could, just grab. It seems things within his reach. So then what happens is, let me talk about his victims now. So in 1963, he was accused of raping his girlfriend, Jacqueline Bonds. At the time, he reportedly drank often, took cocaine, regularly assaulted Ms. Bonds, regularly assaulted, Probably shouldn't stay with the guy if he regularly assaults you. Just my thought, and was in and out of psychiatric care. Now, he was very bizarre. And the question was he psychotic? And I don't know, because I would have to know whether he was faking stuff to get out of going to prison, whether he liked going to psychiatric places. Some people just like going there and playing games and getting drugs. I don't know. But there can be an overlap between a psychopath and a psychotic. You can actually have both. In other words, you're psychopathic, but then you start having problems with certain issues and reality, and you can have an overlap. That's my belief. So in April 1963, shortly before Marcelin was due to appear before the grand jury on rape charges. Now, I'm sorry, sometimes things make me laugh, and not because I don't have pity for the victims, but the circumstances, sometimes you just got to wonder. So anyway, he was charged with raping this woman, Jacqueline Bonds. He was going to appear before a grand jury on the rape charges. Before he appeared, he shot and killed Bonds in their Manhattan apartment. Does anybody see a problem here? It's like, wait a minute. He's being charged with raping you and you're in the apartment with him? I'm going to say maybe not a wise idea. But anyway, I know sometimes what happens when you have these situations is you have a lot of drugs, you have a lot of psychiatric problems between both people, and therefore bad things happen. So then, a police report recorded that he chased her as she staggered through the kitchen and living room. Well, she's staggering, so I'm not sure. I'm going to say maybe she was under the influence of something, and shot her twice more before she collapsed. He was convicted of the first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison, as he should have been. But he was released in 1984. So he spent 19 years in prison, which was his downtime, because he killed somebody and now he's not available to kill people, unless he did in some of his people in prison, but apparently he didn't. So then in 1963. Let's see what happened. Okay, wait a minute. So 1985, because he's out of prison now in 1984. 1 year later, he stabs to death 29-year-old Ana Laura Sierra, a homeless heroin addict and sex worker. Now, the question here is, and this is why I have trouble trying to figure out if he's a serial killer and thinking he's maybe not. I don't know where he was living and where she was living and whether they were doing drugs together. So she's homeless and she's making money through sex. I don't know if he was her boyfriend. I'd have to look really deeply into this, figure out if he was her temporary boyfriend, whether they were doing drugs together, whether she pissed him off, and that's why he killed her. Because the reason I don't call somebody a serial killer, even if they kill more than once, necessarily, is their mind. It's the mindset. Are you hunting people to rape and kill, for example, or even just kill? Are you hunting them down? David Berkowitz, son of Sam, didn't rape anybody, but he hunted them down. He wanted to kill them, to watch them, to have that power and control over killing them, and then he would do it. Then he'd wait some time, and then he'd go and do it again. The same sort of crime over and over again. Ted Bundy, he liked the sexual part too, so he did rapes, sexual homicides. But there was downtime, and then he went out to get another one, and he had a routine of how he's going to get them. This guy, his first one was his girlfriend. They were there in the apartment. I don't know what they mean by rape. Okay, I don't. I don't know what that even means. When they're girlfriend, boyfriend, it gets questionable sometimes as to where was the line where it became rape. But apparently she pissed him off and he killed her. And when I say pissed off, doesn't mean that she's responsible for that. I'm just saying in his mind, she pissed him off. So he killed her. That's not necessarily a serial homicide. It's a nasty homicide. And he's a domestic abuser, but not necessarily a serial killer. So this woman, I don't know the situation where the two of them were together. He told the police that she had sold his flute to buy drugs. I don't know what flute he had. I didn't know he played the flute, but maybe he did. This is the claim. Okay, to buy drugs. So how did she get the flute? So it seems to me they were together in some fashion. Anyway, pretty awful fellow. He killed her, and then he dismembered her body, placed it in a dark plastic bag, which he pushed around in a shopping cart before depositing it at an entrance to Central Park. So anyway, they got him on first-degree murder, but then they gave him a plea bargain, and he only got first-degree manslaughter. He was then returned to prison in 1986. Then he was released in August 2019. He had 15 parole hearings, and the people still let him out. This is a second murder. He's obviously a deranged, dangerous, psychopathic / psychotic human being. They let him out again. He subsequently began identifying as a transgender woman and was placed, and let me show you this other picture of him. He really doesn't look good as a woman. He should probably not have done that. But there he's on the left. Well, that's, okay. Not working well for you, dude. Anyway, he then identifies as a transgender woman and was placed in a woman's homeless shelter in accordance with New York City Department of Social Services policy. So then, that was in 2019. The last victim, his alleged most recent victim, is 68-year-old Susan Layden, who was killed and dismembered in Marcelin's Brooklyn apartment in March 2022. And again, they had some kind of relationship. So he's, in my opinion, more of a relationship killer than a serial killer. Kind of like, I would say, Peterson, not Scott Peterson, the other one. Somebody tell me quick. The police officer Peterson, who the first wife. Let's see, the one that ended up dead in the bathtub, and then the one that went missing. What's his name? Come on, I'm blanking on the Peterson name. Dang. Stacy Peterson was the one that went missing. Thank you, Carrie. All right, Carrie's got the Peterson. There's so many of them, I can't keep up with them. Drew Peterson. Drew Peterson is what I call a situational domestic killer. When the woman pisses him off, he eliminates them. Which is why, if Scott Peterson gets out of prison, because now they're working hard on that, and you marry Scott Peterson after he did in Lacey, think twice about that. Don't do it. So this guy, I think, is a situational domestic killer. Now, he's extremely brutal, mind you, but that doesn't mean he's a serial killer that goes out hunting specifically for the thrill of catching somebody and then doing things to them and killing them. It's a different mindset. So yes, he's killed 3 times, but I don't consider him a serial killer. So when I said that the killer of Abby and Libby in Delphi was a serial killer, it's because of the methodology he uses, the interest he has in getting these girls and then doing something to him. These weren't like, yeah, he didn't, I don't know if he even knew them, but, it's most likely fairly much of a stranger homicide or a very, very vague acquaintance homicide, but not because they were together and one day he lost it and started beating the heck out of them. No. So Delphi looks like a serial killer to me. Marcelin does not. He's a guy you don't ever want to see. That guy should never have seen the light of day after the first killing. But now he's in there again. He's over 80, so they'll probably let him out when he's 90. Probably kill somebody else, So is OJ a serial killer? No. OJ's not a serial killer. OJ, if he did it, which according to the law, he is found not guilty. But if he had done it, no, he's not a serial killer. He killed 2 people at once. That, again, is a domestic situational situation where he killed out of jealousy. And then, the poor fella from the restaurant was just collateral damage. But no, he's not a serial killer. Staircase guy, also a situational domestic killer, not a serial killer. So yes, yeah. So that's the difference between those two kinds of killing. Now, the second big question asked, and this is a longer story that I'm not going to, during the question and answer thing I'm going to do on Sunday. I'm not going to do this lengthy thing on specific cases, but that's why I thought I'd do them here because they're interesting cases on their own. But it does bring out some interesting points. So, okay, so Delphi, the other question people had is, well, hey, if Richard Allen did this, he's gotten a criminal record. This would be his first killing. So he's not a serial killer. And I'm like, well, first of all, you have that kind of confidence and you take down 2 girls at once. I'm going to say if you're mid-40s when it happens, it's not your first. And even if it might be your first murder, it's not your first sexual assault. It's not your first crime. You just haven't been caught. And now what they're going to be doing is looking back. They're going to go back to see every place that guy has ever been and see whether he's connected to other cases. It doesn't have to be 2 girls at a time. It could be 1 girl, or it could be whatever. It could be a rape and not a homicide. But there's going to be something. There's no way you just wake up in your 40s and go, well, now that I've raised my kid and I'm bored with this marriage, I think I'll try murder. That's not the way it works. So the second one I want to talk about is this little girl. And I was asked about this before, but not in connection with the concept of serial homicide. But this little girl named Cherish Periwinkle. Poor little girl. So sad. So anyway, Cherish Periwinkle. Let me tell you the story of Cherish. This is a very recent case. Cherish Periwinkle. This happened in 2013. Okay, time flies. She was an 8-year-old girl from Jacksonville, Florida. She was abducted from a Walmart. She was seen on CCTV leaving the store with a man named Donald Smith, who was later convicted of her murder and sentenced to death. Good. All right. Now, what happened was she and her dad, Cherish's mom and dad, were never married, and they had custody battles. Let me put it this way. She was part of a problematic family. And it's very sad because sometimes when kids are born into families that just can't get it together, they are at much higher risk for crime in one way or the other because they don't have the proper parental attention or have parents making good decisions. And her mother made a dreadful decision in this case. On June 21st, 2016, around 8 p.m., her mother, Rain, Cherish, and her 2 younger sisters went shopping when they first met Donald Smith at a Dollar General, where he offered to buy them clothes they could not afford with their $150 Walmart gift card. Now, mind you, this is June, so it's not like you met somebody on December 24th and the guy felt bad because the kids couldn't have Christmas. They didn't have any Christmas presents. We're talking about June. You know, who offers you to buy your kids clothes in the middle of June for no reason whatsoever? But unfortunately, mommy here. Okay. So the Periwinkles then got into his white van, complete stranger. They get into his van and went with him to Walmart, where they shopped for the next 2 hours. At 10:30 p.m., Smith offered to get them cheeseburgers at the store's McDonald's, and Cherish followed him. So now you got a stranger who, for reasons totally unknown, and who has a van, is buying your kids clothes. And then you let your kid out of your sight to go off with this man. So anyway, she followed him. However, surveillance footage shows that they walked out of the store instead, which was the last time Cherish was seen alive. About half an hour later, Rain called the police to report that her daughter had been abducted, and an Amber Alert was issued 5 hours later. The next morning, Cherish's body was found in a creek behind Highlands Baptist Church. It is believed that Smith had bound her in the back of his van, where she was sexually assaulted and strangled to death. And I just want to stop here to point out what I always point out. When children are kidnapped, it's usually no sex ring, all this stuff that they've been kidnapped into a sex ring. No, they're usually dead within a few hours, because children are hard to carry about and take care of, and all that screaming and, you know, whining and all that stuff. So anybody who kidnaps a kid, he wants them for one purpose only, and it's usually over really quickly. And then they dump their bodies, which is really sad. Anyway, he's an idiot. Okay, so Donald Smith is an idiot because they looked at him. He's on surveillance tape. So police immediately identified Smith as the abductor, with his van being one of the main focuses, I think. Okay, around 9 a.m. the next day, they saw his van on the interstate and cornered him before he surrendered and was promptly arrested. Smith was known to police as a local sex offender with a long criminal history, including numerous offenses against minors. He had been released from jail only 3 weeks prior to Cherish's murder. He's one of those guys that can't stop doing what he likes doing. Okay, now I want to point out a little bit about his background here. This story was Donald Smith is a failure by the criminal justice system, according to a defense expert. I think anybody would know that. You don't need a defense expert on this one. Okay, so what happened? What was his history? His trouble started in 1970s. More than 4 decades ago, Smith was designated as mentally disordered sex offender after pleading guilty to committing a lewd and lascivious act in the presence of a minor, masturbating in front of a 5-year-old and an 8-year-old. He served some time in a treatment facility and then violated his probation and was sent to Florida State Prison for 5 years. All right, not too bad anyway. Then in 1991, he pled guilty to burglary and grand theft charge. He could have gotten 15 years for the burglary, but no, he ended up with 4 months. Yeah, okay. Then, and this is the point I want to make about Delphi. So when this guy killed Cherish, he was in his 50s. So people could say the same thing. Well, you know, he's never killed anybody before, right? That we know of. I mean, he's not a serial killer. Now listen to this. So he killed Cherish. Let's look back. One of the victims connected to Smith's next case from 1993 actually testified as the state's first and only witness in this penalty phase, telling the jury how she escaped his attempted kidnapping when she was 13 years old, and eventually helped bring him to custody by getting his license plate. Well, this girl's really good. And identifying him through a photo array. For the kidnapping alone, he should have faced up to life in prison because he was a habitual repeat offender. Also showed obscene material to her, and he also approached 2 other victims, showing pornography to lure them. He was originally sentenced to 15 years, but it was vacated when he appealed based on a claim against his attorney. So he only served 6. But let me ask you this question. This really brave girl who escaped from him at 13 and identified him, do you honestly think she was going to live if he had been able to keep her? And the answer to that is no. That would have been one of his murders. So by the time he killed Cherish, that would have been his 2nd murder. Just because he screwed up doesn't mean he's not a serial killer. It just means he's a screw up. Now, we also don't know if he committed any other murders because they just haven't found them. Just because he gets away with it doesn't mean he didn't do it, you know? So I think that's really important. Now he's in prison. He won't commit any more. I want to point this interesting thing out too. Because he's only committed one murder, he's not going to be considered a serial killer. So in all the when people say how many serial killers are in the United States, well, he's not considered one, so there's one less, right? Or if people do studies on serial killers, they don't study him, Donald Smith, because he's not a serial killer because he only killed one. No, that's not true. He is a serial killer. It's just we only caught him on one, and one girl escaped. So I think that's really important to understand. So Richard Allen, if he is Bridge Guy, if he did kill those girls, I guarantee you, he's a serial killer. I don't care whether you can prove he's killed before. I'm going to guarantee you that that kind of crime in your mid-40s is not the first time he committed that kind of crime. You need to check every place that man has ever lived to find out who he might have. Any place he's lived, any place he's worked, any place he's vacationed, any relatives he visited, find out, because killers usually kind of work in an area where they're at. So go find out where he's been at and see if he's done in some other people. But even if you don't find one and he gets convicted of this crime, I'm going to say he's a serial killer. And we should stop downplaying that kind of thing, because Harvey Marcelin was not really a serial killer, yet they're calling him one. This guy, Donald Smith, serial killer. The guy who killed those two girls, serial killer. We should understand the mindset of serial killers and how they operate, because, you know, we just often don't catch all of their crimes. If you remember the case I did recently on Andrea Sincata, the guy who was convicted of killing her, Bobby Joe Leonard, strangled her and put her in a closet. Well, he claimed that he was hired. It was a hired hit, which is garbage. He's a serial killer. And a year after he killed Andrea Sincata, he then abducted, raped, and strangled a teenage girl who, like this girl, woke up and didn't die. And then she lived. And to testify against him, he was in prison after that. 2 women, 1 woman, 1 teenager, two females, within a year, both strangled and put in a closet. And you're going to tell me that guy's not a serial killer? Yes, he is. Problem is, guess what? He's not labeled a serial killer. So there we go again. People don't recognize what serial killers are. So I just wanted to really bring that out so you could understand that. I believe serial homicide is highly misunderstood, because we seem to want to have somebody who, you know, the Green River Killer, Ted Bundy, Danny Rowling. You have to have like a pile of them. And you have to have them caught for a pile of them, not the guy that you haven't caught for a lot of other things, you know. But the mindset is always the same. Mostly stranger homicide, somebody who is stalked, somebody who's, you know, that they're watching, trolling in an area, looking for somebody to get. And when they have that opportunity, they grab them and they commit a horrible, horrible crime against them. They murder them, usually sexual homicide, but not always. That's a serial killer. And I don't think we should wait around until we can prove they linked to 3. Because, well, first of all, if they've got 1, we should be looking to see what else they're connected to in order to find out, you know, what they've done. But also, we don't want to let them back out again thinking, oh, it's just a one-off killing. No, you let them out, they're going to do it again. Don't let them out. You know, they're dangerous. And serial rapists are they're serial predators. They just haven't decided to kill. Now, they haven't decided to kill either because the killing part doesn't thrill them. They just like the power and control of the rape part. Or they haven't had anybody rat them out yet. So there's a number of rapists who become serial killers after one of the women went to the police and he's like, oh, I'm not taking that chance again. And then he becomes a serial killer. So same concept, though. Serial predators are serial predators. I just want to point that out. All right. So, and thank you very much, Lisa. Excellent points. Thank you. This is what I want this channel for. I want to teach people. So anyway, that was my Delphi thing for you tonight. Now, I want to bring up some news, because some interesting news. This is really interesting. Malcolm X. All right, let me see. There were there were 3 guys that were arrested for the murder of Malcolm X, and they have just exonerated 2 men. This is one of the guys that they exonerated. That's what he looked like when he was arrested and charged, and that's what he looks like today. His name is Muhammad Aziz, and he was a suspect in the slaying of Malcolm X after his arrest, and then he got convicted, and it was vacated just November 18th. So anyway, these guys, there's 3 guys. One guy is unquestionable. He shot Malcolm X. There's not a question about that. And if you don't know who Malcolm X is, I guess I ought to at least give you let me just give you the really quick lowdown on Malcolm X. All right. I didn't pull it up here, but let me pull it up here because I forget that not everybody is American and might know this. Murder of Malcolm X. Okay. Can't spell his name. Hey, Malcolm X. Okay. All right. Malcolm X. He was murdered in 1965 at the Audubon Ballroom. And he was, okay, let me just read you what he was, because this is a really interesting piece of news, because these guys just got $36 million, these 2 guys. I'll explain it to you in a minute. Malcolm X, an African-American Muslim minister and human rights activist who was a popular figure during the civil rights movement, was assassinated in Manhattan, New York City on February 21st, 1965. While preparing to address the Organization of Afro-American Unity at the Audubon Ballroom in the neighborhood of Washington Heights, Malcolm X was shot multiple times and killed. Now, this is where the question comes in. I'm thinking of doing a show on this, but I'm not sure if it's a rabbit hole. So, I'm very concerned about doing political stuff because political stuff can get your show kicked off of YouTube. And also people get really annoyed with political things, and then you get lots of enemies. And I just don't want this to be a political channel. And I also don't know, because it's so old, it's hard to get at the truth. But I'm just going to point out a couple of interesting things about this case, just because I find it, fascinating. 65, I was 10 years old at the time. But when I was like my 20s, 10 years later, still part of the Black Power movement was going on. I did read the autobiography of Malcolm X. I read about Bobby Seale. I was a kind of a buff on history and things going on in the country. So I read a lot of stuff about this. Anyway, so he was shot multiple times and killed. Now, the next sentence is this. This is on Wikipedia, so we're just talking about basic facts, but now the facts have changed. 3 members of the Nation of Islam, Muhammad Aziz, Khalil Islam, and Thomas Hagen. Thomas Hagen's the one that everybody saw shooting Malcolm X, so no question about that dude. Were charged with the murder and given indeterminate life sentences. But in November 2021, 2 of the men were exonerated. All right. Now, so these guys, they just got, $23 million. Now they were in prison. Let me see how long they were in prison. It was a long time. So, okay. The men exonerated the Malcolm X killing will receive $36 million. The city of New York is settling lawsuits filed on behalf of 2 men who were exonerated last year for the 1965 assassination of Malcolm X, agreeing to pay $26 million for the wrongful convictions, which led to both men spending decades behind bars. The state of New York will pay an additional $10 million. So they got $36 million, essentially. Muhammad Aziz, Khalil Islam, and their families suffer because of these unjust convictions for more than 50 years. All right. So now, I often talk about Innocence Project stuff and people who are found innocent years later. Are they really innocent, or are there just, what should we say, technical issues? Somebody goes back and says, this wasn't done quite right. And you don't know, are the guys really innocent? Or are we just going with little legalese things? So they said here, last year, a Manhattan judge dismissed the convictions of Aziz, now 84, and Islam, who died in 2009. I'm sorry, but there's 2 happy families. The grandkids are like, we into money. They don't even know. They probably don't even know really the history of their grandfather or great grandfather, whatever. They're like, man, we just scored. Terrible. It's true, because the 2 men who spent years in prison, they're not doing anything with this money. All right. So the judge dismissed the convictions of Aziz, now 84, and Islam, who died in 2009, after prosecutors said new evidence. I'm always amazed with the new evidence. I'm not sure how new something can be when this happened in 65. So, it's for 50 years later. New isn't new. It's reanalyzed and reinterpreted. This is the point I want to make. Reinterpreted, not new. Anyway, after prosecutors said new evidence of witness intimidation and suppression of exculpatory evidence, and suppression of exculpatory evidence had undermined the case against the men. All right. Now, so they're claiming there was intimidation, and then the witnesses were, maybe they weren't quite right. So, do I know it's true or not? Now, 3 men did go in there and shoot at Malcolm X. One man was unquestionably, they ran, after they shot him, they ran out, and the crowd attacked the peak guys, and they caught the one guy. So that guy clearly did it. The other 2 guys ran away. And the question was, who were the other 2 guys? So there were witnesses. They said there's no physical evidence. Well, there were witnesses who said this is who the 2 guys were. They're now claiming that the 2 guys had alibis. Well, the alibis were their wives. So you know how that wives are not good alibis, nor are their mothers. So, those aren't good alibis. Good alibi would be the guy was 50 miles away in another town and was seen on camera. Not that your wife said you were home. So that's garbage. Another interesting thing is, how did these guys get into the police hands at all? And so fascinating. I read this. I was looking up and I found this old piece of information, this old book. You see, so now in this old book, oh my God, I can't read it. Hold on a second. It's in this old book. Hold on. Let me pull it up for myself because I can't see it from here. It's too far away. All right. Let me read. The funny thing about this is what I read in here. And I thought, wow, that's fascinating. All right. So anyway, this is the basic theory. Less than 2 hours after Malcolm was shot down, top police officials handed down the line that the killing was the result of a feud between the Black Muslims and Malcolm's movement. That is, the killers were Black Muslims or their agents. You have to understand the whole history of this. But anyway, Malcolm X separated from the Black Muslim group, Nation of Islam. He separated. So there were 2 separate groups, and this group, he was here, and they were pissed at each other, basically, and they were definitely pissed at Malcolm X. But then again, there were supposedly governmental issues, or interests, political issues. The U.S. government didn't like him. So there were a lot of issues. But how did they get these other 2 fellows? Well, let me see if I can find it here. Okay, the guys they have exonerated, their actual real names before they changed them to Muslim names, were Butler and Johnson. They were well-known Black Muslims. In January, they and a 3rd man were arrested after an argument with an ex-Muslim, Benjamin Brown, that ended in the shooting of Brown. Butler and Johnson were out on bail on first-degree assault charges at the time of Malcolm's murder. So they had 3 guys that killed an ex-Black Muslim. Then these 2 guys are let out on bail, and Malcolm X gets murdered, and they're identified by some of the people as being the 2 guys that were with the guy they absolutely caught. So the story goes from here, that the claim is that these 2 guys, the guy that shot Malcolm X wasn't really a Black Muslim. So he says that wasn't the reason I shot. But see, then you get into all the rabbit hole stuff. Is who's with what group? Was there a government conspiracy? Did they have agents in there that killed Malcolm X and they blamed it on Black Muslims? So then you get into this whole very convoluted, confusing thing 50 years later when people reanalyze and try to decide what happened. And it was a very, very hot political time with a lot of controversy, and the government definitely didn't like Malcolm X. So I said, oh, could they be behind it? I'm not saying they couldn't, but then again, so it gets, it's really interesting. But I just wanted to point out that what I find fascinating is, they gave this huge money over and they say, okay, we exonerated the guys from something that the defense says is a little squirrely. Now, the defense may be correct. Maybe there is something squirrely, and they weren't actually the two guys that ran along with the other guy. Maybe they're not. But on the other hand, they did just help shoot a guy and were out on bail. And So all I'm saying is I keep myself going, well, I'm not sure. So I don't tend to jump up and down and root right away when somebody's been exonerated on, these poor guys, we're going to pay for the ills of the state. Maybe the state did screw somebody over. Maybe it's these two guys, but I just don't know. And so I don't automatically just go, oh my God, they weren't the right guys that killed Malcolm X, these poor guys. I don't know. But, I don't think anybody's reading this book that was written in, when was this book written? Oh my goodness, I don't even know. Book was written a long time ago. They're not reading this book to find out that those two guys were actually out on bail for killing somebody else. So, that's the thing. We never get full stories. And so I may do a show on this just because I'm very interested now, because there are some interesting issues about these two guys, perhaps not having the proper motive to kill Malcolm X. So I don't know. The best argument actually I heard, I thought was kind of a good argument, was that these guys were well known and that there was high security at this event. So they would have been stopped from coming into the event, because anybody that Malcolm X's people would have gone, you're not coming in. We don't trust you here, so we're not going to let you in. That's the best argument I've heard. Yet other people said they saw them. And so I don't know the truth. But I think it's fascinating. I think that's why I say, never just assume something because something happens. You go, oh my God, so that's true. Not necessarily. This question, have you heard of the double homicide of two young girls in Evansdale, Iowa, similar to Delphi? Yes, and I'm going to be talking about this on Sunday. If he was there, he could have committed this crime. However, these are two girls riding some bicycles. Just because there's two girls here and two girls there doesn't mean they're the same guy. Similar crimes happen across the United States. It just sometimes is a matter of who happens to come across whom. So some other serial killer could have come across the two girls, not him. And just because there's two girls doesn't mean, he's not like, every time I do this crime, I'm going to have to pick two girls. That's not necessarily true. Maybe only wanted one girl, and darn it, the other girl was there. So it has similarities, but it doesn't mean it's the same guy. However, should they be checking out Richard Allen to see if he was in Evansdale, Iowa? You betcha they should check that out. Absolutely. He could have done it. I just don't know if he was there. I think it's 400 miles away or something. If he had reason to be there, if he had moved from there, if he visited there, I haven't looked into all of his movements. But if he was in Evansdale at the time these girls were killed, yeah, he'd be a really good suspect. But if he hasn't been there, Evansdale, you just got another serial killer out there. So Michaela says the butler did it. Well, you can always blame the butler. But I just thought that was a really interesting story about Malcolm X. And I am curious now, because I grew up in the 70s, so I read a lot about Malcolm X and Black Panthers and the whole movement there. And so, and I like the fact that Malcolm X, he had his viewpoints, and then he went traveling around the world and came back, and he was a much changed man. He decided that he had a heart for all people, of all colors, and I respected him for that. And I thought that was very cool. But some people didn't like it, so he got knocked off. So anyway, but I don't know who knocked him off. Did Black Muslims knock him off, or did the U.S. government knock him off? Pick what rabbit hole you like. But I'm not going to go down a rabbit hole unless I can actually find. I won't do rabbit holes. I have to find information. I have to have enough significant evidence and good information I can read to determine what at least makes sense, rather than just doing just a ridiculous guessing and pointing fingers and going, how is this going to happen and that going to happen? But also, speaking of that, I want to point out this thing with Adnan Syed. Adnan Syed, who he was the one that was convicted for murdering Hayman Lee in Baltimore many years ago. And Marilyn Mosby, the Baltimore City state's attorney, who was a crook, There she is. Anyway, she's been indicted. She got her office to get Syed out on some technicalities and some claims of Brady violations that when the defense was trying to prepare, that they didn't get some piece of information. One of the pieces of information is this, and this is why I bring this up, because here you have stuff that this is what gets him out. And then you say to yourself, was this really enough that he should have been exonerated from a crime that the jury found him guilty of? All right. So this guy wrote this, let me find the article. Hold on a second. The guy's name is York. That was the prosecutor. Hold on a second. Hold on one second. Don't disappear on me, folks. Really? Where'd it go? Okay, there it is. Oh, aren't you better not do that, Fox Baltimore? Okay, here we go. All right. I thought it was a paywall came up on it. All right. A handwritten note taken 20 years ago is at the center of the world-renowned case. But the intentions of the words scribbled on the legal pad. Here's a scribbled legal pad, okay? He's writing stuff on this thing here. He told her he would not be something. Anyway, it was called into question. This is the notes. This is one of the things that got Adnan Syed out of prison and quote exonerated him. Adnan Syed was convicted of his ex-girlfriend's death, Hayman Lee, in 2000, and later became part of the serial podcast that gained national attention, which I'm not fond of. Syed's conviction was vacated in September after that's not in here. I added that word. Baltimore City State's Attorney Marilyn Mosby, I just do not like her, said there was evidence of alternative suspects. Evidence of alternative suspects. You know what alternative suspects are? Everybody in the city. Because any place you are, take a look at Delphi. You know how many alternative suspects are in the Delphi case? Tons of them, because there's creepy people everywhere. People say stupid things. People are in different places. And when you're investigating, you must investigate all these people, even if it's like, I don't think he's the guy. But you have to investigate him anyway. Oh, look, and you write notes down. So you might write a note down that he said, I don't like Hayman Lee, and that's in your notes. He becomes an alternative suspect. But you as a detective go, because he's not impressing you as being the guy. Okay. So in other words, you look at all the evidence, and if it hones in on a specific person like Adnan Syed, you do not spend as much time on every other alternative suspect, So anyway, Marilyn Mosby said there was evidence of alternative suspects, because if you do your investigation, there's always going to be alternative suspects. And if you do an investigation and there's not one alternative suspects, they get the guy out because, hey, you didn't do your job. You didn't even look for an alternative suspect. You can't win. So anyway, there was evidence of alternative suspects who may have been working together. Well, no, Adnan Syed and his little buddy who helped bury her, those were the two suspects. But all of a sudden, now there's two other guys working together. The evidence was not shared with Syed's defense. They called it a Brady violation. Now, the note at the heart of the Brady violation allegation, something that the Maryland State's Attorney General Byron Frosh has denied, was written by a former prosecutor, Kevin York. The handwritten note was first reported by the Baltimore Banner, but Fox News has also obtained a copy and York's transcription. Because other suspects have not been charged, they have redacted the note and transcription to protect identities. All right. So this is the note here. The author of this note has examined and transcribed it as follows. She was scared, has some legitimate fears. Prior to the murder, somebody was upset that the woman was creating so many problems for Adnan. He told her that he would make her disappear. He would kill her. Admits somebody was making grandiose statements, very high opinion of himself, so she didn't necessarily take him seriously. Another witness, that's the other guy. Jay Wells, that's the other guy that worked with Adnan. He was involved in the burial of the body. Well, supposedly it was Jay Wells was was involved with the burial of the body at the command of Adnan Syed. And then it goes on, blah, blah, blah. He was with blank and Adnan when the body was found. Both talked about the police ability to determine the time of death, so on and so forth. Now, this is a scribbled note that you know, and I know that having taken notes, sometimes if somebody comes back and says, so what do your notes say? I'm like, I don't know. I can't read them. You know, I mean, unless you know, really know and really transcribe it right away. Sometimes you don't even remember. And sometimes you're trying to catch things and you may take things out of order. You may have, you know, because you're doing investigative notes, you're not so much doing an interviewer, you know, writing your police report. You're just scribbling stuff when you're trying to talk to people. So anyway, what happened here is this person, Feldman, that's Prosecutor Becky Feldman, said they were morally and ethically compelled after they discovered that this note had been, quote, withheld from the defense, which it supposedly wasn't. They just never asked for it. Suspects were credible and viable alternatives to Syed. Sure they were. For example, one of the suspects lived across the street from where Lee's car was found. That makes you a killer. It's like ridiculous. So anyway, according to Urick's transcription of the note, he said that the word he was not referring to another suspect, but rather Syed himself. He says that note was about Syed and his buddy who helped bury the body. It wasn't about somebody else. But of course, Marilyn Mosby says that's ridiculous. That's not true. So she says, oh no, he's just making that stuff up now. This is how Adnan Syed got out of prison, because somebody wrote a note that somebody has interpreted in a certain way and claims there's other viable suspects. And even though all the evidence points to Adnan Syed, oh, but this guy could have done it. Yeah. That's how this nonsense works. And it's really, really, really sad. Really, really annoying. Is Marilyn Mosby a female Jose Baez? No, she's not. She's the Baltimore City State's attorney. And I say she's being indicted for a bunch of crooked stuff with her husband. She is more of a, I would say, she's a progressive, what you call a progressive state's attorney who wants to change the laws. She wants to even things out for people she thinks have been unfair, a lot of racial things involved, and getting rid of bond and stuff like that. She's been a disaster for the city of Baltimore, which has crime rate is out of control, which is really sad because everybody's suffering. I don't care what race you are, you're still suffering from the problems in Baltimore. Yeah, she's more political than she is concerned about justice. That's the sad thing about that. So, well, thank you, Elena. I appreciate that. But this is another case of where when somebody gets exonerated, you're like, you have to just question why. Now, there are people where true evidence exonerates them. And for that, we should cheer, because no innocent person should be in prison. But you have to be very wary. I just want people to be wary of when you hear stuff through the media. You got to step back a little and say, is it true? And then sometimes you have to go through like 30 pages of the internet, to find the information about a case and find out what the truth actually is. So, hi, Naomi. Well, you can go back later and come forward to this. So we're finishing here on the Adnan Syed thing. So when you review it, stop here. But we're going to go on to a couple other things I wanted to talk about. Somebody had asked me about some of the sad things that happen to children. I mean, children are you just really think about children. They have no rights when it comes down to who they get stuck with. They just don't. They get stuck with crappy parents and they get stuck with crappy foster parents. And somebody was asked me about, I think it was Christiane, asked me about this sad case. So this is a case that's been going on forever and ever and ever now. I did a whole show on this. I'll link that below. The show, it's on, let me just find the information on here. Sorry, I'm going through all my stuff now. Where is it? Oh my God. Oh, here we go. It's hard to see I got all these boxes open. So, okay. So we got William Tyrell. All right. It has been 8 years since William Tyrell just went missing. He had family issues, so he ended up in foster care. And you have to watch my whole video on that to see who I think was involved. But I'm going to say I pretty much agree with the senior detective here. All right. It's not really new news because the title is New NSW Detectives Bombshell Revelations and Mysterious Disappearance of William Tyrell. Okay. It's not bombshell, but he made a statement, which I guess this kind of statement hadn't been made before. A senior detective has made a damning public admission on the suspected whereabouts of missing boy William Tyrell, whose body has never been found. Detective Sergeant Andrew Lonergan told a local court he believes Tyrell's former foster mother knows where the child's body is buried. The sensational, I love how the media just always blows these things up. The sensational revelation came after a high-profile search around his foster grandmother's home in November. So he was with his foster parents and then went over to the foster grandmother's home, and that's where he vanished out of. And they claimed he was kidnapped. Okay. They did a high-profile search around the foster's grandmother home and failed to make a breakthrough. In other words, they dug up a lot of stuff, didn't come up with it. All right. The woman, who cannot be named for legal reasons, the foster mother, appeared on unrelated charges. She is accused of lying to the NSW Crime Commission about whether she has ever stuck another child in her care with a wooden spoon. And then her lawyers say, hey, they're just pressuring her to reveal, to give information out. That's why they're doing this. They're not really there for that charge. They're really just trying to, make her confess to something else. Probably true. But anyway, so supposedly they put audio recordings from listening devices were placed in the home of William Tyrell's former foster mother and recorded what police allege is the woman hitting a child who is not the missing boy with a wooden spoon. The child can be heard threatening to call the police beforehand. A woman is then heard telling the child to stand up 3 times. Where did you put the wooden spoon? The court heard a woman on the recording say. The child then pleads, screams, and cries, and is told to turn around and move her hands before smacking sounds are heard. She's still going on about it, the woman is heard telling her husband in a later phone call intercepted by the police. Okay, so, yeah. Do I think William Tyrell was kidnapped? No. Click on the link below and I'll explain all the reasons I do not think he was kidnapped. Now, foster parenting. The difficulty with foster parenting as opposed to biological parenting is that, well, maybe the frying pan into the fire type thing. You have a child who's in a biological family and that family is failing him, not caring for him, maybe endangering him, abusing him, doing all kinds of things. So social services has to pull him out because his life is in danger and they have to. And then they put him someplace and they have to find someplace to put him. And people a lot of times are really anti the social services systems because they think they're, they got issues too, and they do. Because I've been involved in the social service system. I have one adopted child who was in foster care for 5 years before I adopted him, and not my foster care, in foster care of other people. And then I brought him to my home, had him for a year, and then we were allowed to adopt him after a year. And then I had a foster daughter who's deaf. She was a teenager, and it was very unpleasant. She was with me for a year. I loved her. And then the foster care people, the social service people, removed her from my home with claims that were just really sad. And then they put her with a hearing family who couldn't even sign to her, so she couldn't have had communication. So it was very sad. I saw her years later, and she says, "Mommy, mommy, mommy." Oh, so it's sad. But anyway, a long story. I never quite got over that one. But anyway, so social services tries to find a good family, theoretically, to take in a child. Here's the problem. Who does this? Now, you have a bunch of different kinds of people who do foster care. You have people with the biggest hearts of gold who care for that child no matter what. They're just wonderful human beings. A very hard job for them because foster care often means that you grow to love the child, and then they come and snatch the kid back, like they did with me, and chuck them back into another situation, sometimes back with the biological parents where they get killed. And then after you've learned to love that child, the child's taken away and put back in a hellhole. And that's just not a fun thing to watch. Very difficult. Some foster parents are lucky they get to keep the kid long enough to be able to adopt them. and then that's their child and they can raise them. And that's wonderful for the child and the foster parents. And then you get foster parents who just take in kids because of the money, as many as they can to make money, and they just don't provide the children with as much money. They don't use the, let's say, the bulk of the money for the child. They use the bulk of the money for themselves. That happens too. And then you get people who take in children for some other bizarre concepts. Like I think that Tyrell's foster parents did. They didn't have any other children, I don't believe. So I don't know why they decided to do this. But sometimes they have psychological problems and they're no healthier than the biological family. And sometimes children get killed in the homes of the foster parents. And one of the number one reasons they get killed in the home of the foster parents, even if those foster parents have already had children, is because a lot of times a foster child comes from a bad situation. They don't have good behavior, and they have a lot of times attachment disorder, and they don't connect well with the caretakers. So they become children that are difficult to deal with, difficult to love. And sometimes the children are violent and they're just hard to care for. And then that foster parent starts becoming more and more enraged and angry because that they're doing this nice thing, and then the kid's not cooperating and it's just driving them insane. And then they lose it. That's sometimes what happens. Now, I'm not saying they should lose it. I'm just saying it can become very difficult. So what do? Do you leave them in the hornet's nest of the biological family, or do you move them to a social foster family and hope the heck that they're the good ones and can handle this kid? It's really tricky. In this case, he was moved to this family and didn't go well. Disappeared, never been found. So, but now let's take a look at our biological family. All right. So how about this child? All right, this child went missing recently. This child is let me find her. Hold on. Oh, here we go. All right. This little girl on the left, Quinton Simon's on the left. I think this is a boy. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Quinton Simon is on the left. The mother is on the right. Her name is Leilani Simon. Okay. So Leilani, that's the mother. Mother of missing Georgia 20-month-old Quinton Simon says she has to barricade her home and she can't go outside without facing harassment and negligence in an interview with local media. Okay, so this kid's still missing. This story came out. What's this recently? I'm trying to remember when this all happened. It was in October. So this is very recent, October 5th. Detectives have dubbed Leilani Simon, 22, the prime suspect in Quinton's disappearance and suspected death, but she has not been charged with a crime. All right, so they have notified the family that they believe he is deceased, the little boy. They have named his mother, Leilani Simon, as a prime suspect in his disappearance and death, but they haven't made any arrests. Now, over the weekend, they conducted additional interviews, conducting a search of a local landfill, and they have not found the little boy's remains. According to investigators, they believe the child was abandoned in a dumpster sometime after he was seen 3 weeks ago. And then Leilani, the mother, makes this strange statement. I'm not running and I'm not hiding. And if something comes up that I'm at fault, I'll take myself to that police station. And if something does come up that I'm at fault, well, you're either at fault or you're not. How does something come up that you're at fault if you're not at fault? In other words, if they figure it out, if they find the kid and there's no way out, I'll go to the police station. So this is a hidden confession here, right there. That's like interesting. However, she added her family's being harassed by people who suspect her of wrongdoing, and somebody made a makeshift memorial and slapped baby killer on. Now, this is the problem of sometimes the internet and other annoying people who just don't know how to let the police do their work. And I know you may think this woman's guilty, but you don't want to become a stalker and a creepy harasser either. Now, this is one thing I think that really ticked people off. This is Leilani, and this is her mommy. And so apparently what really ticked people off is that they were spotted at a trendy Savannah bar taking shots of Patron and flirting with staff despite the child's disappearance. Wow. Okay, so I get that you might want to stay home and drink yourself to death because your son is missing, your beloved son, but going out to the bar and chucking down shots of Patron and, hey, how y'all doing, doesn't give you a good look for how much you care about your child. And I don't care. Oh, everyone expresses their grief in a different way. Not that way. That's why people think you're guilty. Along with the fact you say, if you find something, I'll show up. Okay, so what kind of home did she live in? What kind of Quinton, what kind of home was that? I'm going to say not a good home. And now, so should social services have come in sooner if they had known something was wrong? And the best example of this is this other horrific case. And this is amazing when you see what social services did or didn't do during this whole thing. All right, so this is Harmony Montgomery. Okay, so Harmony Montgomery, that cute little girl. All right, what happened to Harmony Montgomery? Her father has now been charged with murdering his daughter, Harmony. She was 5 years old. All right, so let's see. He was accused of repeatedly striking Harmony with his fist on or about December 7th, 2019. All right. So he basically beat her to death and then got rid of her body. That's what he did. Separately, he's being charged with facing charges of felony theft, being a felon in possession of a weapon, and being an armed career criminal in connection with the thefts of a rifle and a shotgun in the fall of 2019. So not a good guy. He's a felon who's running around getting guns. All right. Now, let's the interesting part of this is the actual investigation and what happened. What all the information from her past. This is how bad it is. All right. June 2014. Harmony is born. Crystal Sorey is her sole caretaker. That's her mom. Where's daddy? Adam Montgomery? He's in prison. So moms, pick out better husbands. You know what I mean? Oh, okay. It's not even her husband. Pick out better boyfriends, not criminals. So anyway, Harmony is removed from, okay, this is in 2018. So four years. She's lived with her mother for 4 years while her daddy's in prison. She's removed from Sorey's care 3 times because of neglect related to drug use. Harmony visits her father in prison twice. Oh, yay. So anyway, mom's doing drugs and she has to be removed from the home 3 times, which means she also is taken back 3 times to the mother who's doing drugs. And if the mother keeps doing drugs, why is she going back? Now, to me, the idea of your child returning is that you have to prove that your child should return. But the poor child's like a ping ball, ding, 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 ding. She goes to a foster home, which she doesn't belong in. They try to be nice to her and tries to have a safety home. Then they rip her back out and chuck her back with mommy who's doing drugs. And then this goes on back and forth, sometimes not even to the same foster home. And then the foster parent now probably brokenhearted because the kid has to go back to a drug house because they didn't actually solve the problem. So anyway, all right, 2015, Adam Montgomery is released from prison and moves to New Hampshire. 2016, 1 year after his release, Adam Montgomery contacts the Massachusetts Department of Children and Families for the first time to resume visits with Harmony. 2017, after visiting with Harmon once per month for 5 months, he stops responding to DCF's request for future meetings. So he sees her 5 times and he doesn't bother with her. So now another year goes by. August 2018, Adam Montgomery meets with Harmony for the first time in 11 months and the 9th time in her life. He didn't contact anybody for 7 months. What was he doing for 7 months? And why does he, now, oh, I'm back. I can see the kid now. 2018, Crystal Sorey, mother of Harmony Montgomery, loses custody of her daughter in Massachusetts. Sorey later tells police she lost custody because of drug addiction. Well, yeah, because you never fixed the problem. And Harmony was placed in foster care home in Haverhill. That's July of 2018. December of 2018, so now we're just talking, just a little while later. Let's say July, less than 6 months later. The Massachusetts Department of Children and Families requests a home study by the New Hampshire Division of Children, Youth, and Families in Montgomery's home in Manchester. The request does not include the necessary information to initiate a home study. Then in February of 2019, Harmony's father, get this one, Adam Montgomery is granted legal custody of the girl. He's seen her what? What does it say? 9 times, and let's see. How many times has he actually seen her? 9. He saw her 9 times in her life. And he's a felon. He gets custody of her. The DCYF officials are notified of the custody decision before it receives the additional information requested for the home study. So they didn't do the home study on this creep. So then, that was February of 2019. Easter of 2019, Sori says she spoke to her daughter on FaceTime call the last time she saw Harmony. By July, they receive an anonymous phone call alleging abuse. The caller says Harmony had a black eye when the caller visited her at the Guildford Street home in Manchester the week before. A child protective service worker visits the home and emails Manchester police to say no eye injury was observed. In August, just a month later, they visit the home again. They interview Harmony and Adam and Kayla Montgomery. The worker notices a red mark in Harmony's eyes and faded bruising under her eyelid. Adam Montgomery says the mark was caused when she was struck by a toy playing with a sibling. Caseworker also speaks to Sori, who tells the agency she lost custody to Adam Montgomery. Then, in November of 2019, Adam Montgomery told Kayla Montgomery that he was taking Harmony to Lowell, Massachusetts, where her mother lives. Kayla Montgomery later tells the police the last time she ever saw her. So in January, let's see, they got a referral. Adam Montgomery tells a child protective worker that Harmony is living with her mother in Massachusetts. What? Okay. How's that possible? And then in January, they leave a voicemail for Sori to confirm that Harmony's address, and she doesn't return the phone call. This just goes on and on and on. Now that she's supposed to be registered for school, and she doesn't arrive at school. And then Sori writes a letter saying, help me find my daughter. They find Adam Montgomery is living in his car with his new girlfriend. Guess that was a home study to be done. In a car with his girlfriend. They describe him as uncooperative, you think, and refusing to provide information on Harmony's whereabouts. Okay, well, because she's dead. That's what. So then they start digging up the place. Oh, wait a minute. I didn't even get to show you a picture of this piece of crap. And you can tell me. Okay, so I got to take this picture. I'm going to send it over to the computer. Okay, well, now what's going on here? Okay, hold on a second. And you got to look at this guy. And you can tell me right away what you notice about this guy that was actually given custody of the daughter he only saw 9 times. Hold on a second. I got to send this over. This is just unbelievable. Okay. Hold on a second. All right. It's coming over now. And one cool thing about this methodology is at least you can pick up stuff in the middle of nowhere and bring it over. Here he is. Okay. I want your opinion on this guy. Come on now. What's going on here? Okay, here we go. Here's Daddy. What do you notice about him? Anybody? What do you notice about him? Because I saw it right away. At least I think I'm right about this, unless I've forgotten what this means. But I mean, let me go back to your comments now. Sounds like Casey Anthony. Oh, yeah. The little girl, the boy that went missing. Yeah, I mean, and then you go out drinking with your mommy. I mean, it's like, really? I mean, how much do you give a crap about your missing child? That's usually a big hint. But what do you notice about that picture of that crappy daddy, the felon daddy? I'm just going to check this out to be sure I got this right, but I just noticed it. So. Okay, it's this one. Okay, did anybody notice it? Tear, okay. All right. Tear means he's killed someone. Okay, it's called a teardrop tattoo. Yeah. It's one of the most widely recognized prison tattoo and has various meanings. So yes, you got a good point there. It can signify that the wearer has spent time in prison, or more specifically, that the wearer was raped while incarcerated and tattooed by somebody. Okay, but also, I've also believed that The West Coast gang culture. Now, this is what I think it means. West Coast gang culture. The tattoo may signify the wearer has killed someone. Right. In some of those circles, the tattoo meanings can change. An empty outline means the wearer is attempted murder or that a fellow gang member or friend died. And if it's filled in, the wearer sought revenge. The exact meaning is only known by the wearer. However, what a piece of crap. I mean, the guy's a longtime felon. He with arm. He's got, he's getting guns when he's he's not allowed to get guns, and they put that child in his custody, and he's got the little tear thing going there. I mean, basically, this guy part of a gang. I mean, what is he's a criminal, and that child's in his custody. You couldn't put her in a foster family. What the hell? So sometimes the biological family is terrible, and that child should be in a foster family because there's no hope for that biological family because they don't do what they need to do to be parents to that child. So it's a real tough situation when you've got the choice between one and the other. And I just think if it's that bad over here, you got to try for over here because you really don't have a choice. But I do sometimes think that social services is overwhelmed with cases, and there are a lot that sometimes are so pushed to keep the child with a biological family that they have to overlook stuff in order to try to allow that to happen. And then sometimes they leave a kid with a foster family who's really questionable because they don't have enough foster families. So, I don't envy social workers their jobs. It's a hard job, and sometimes the law just makes it extremely difficult. And speaking of that, my last thing I'm going to talk about today, just because I thought this was, this is just a local case, but this goes to show you what happens when you have a family having trouble with a kid. What do they do? This happened in Baltimore, our Baltimore area. Father says 14-year-old son steals cars and faces no consequences. This is a father who wants to try to fix his kid. Santiago didn't want his last name used and won't identify his 14-year-old son. But he came to the news to actually share a story. He says his child has gone wild. He started breaking into cars to steal cigarettes and chains and cigarettes and then chains. And then you're stealing cars and running from the police. His son, not even old enough to drive, is now on a carjacking and car theft spree. Santiago says this is about his son and friend, the tale of two stolen cars, a Lexus and a Honda CRV, in a high-speed chase. They were flying down Route 4, which is nearer to my house, going 100 miles an hour in and out of traffic. Santiago says his son nearly took the lives of two police officers trying to stop him. They were trying to barricade my son in. Someone tried to stop. He took, okay, this is hard to read because he's not speaking English really well. It took the gas and tried to drive right through him, knocked him out of his shoes. It's a story he believes illustrates exactly what's fueling juvenile crime in Baltimore, along with Maryland, Mosby, and beyond, including several counties, which is my county here too. His son has been arrested several times. Santiago says for all of it, his child has never faced serious consequences. This isn't even about my son. This is about Baltimore City kids. This is about all juvenile delinquents. For his 14-year-old, he says all but one of 19 charges he faced were dropped. The remaining charge only carried probation. Carjacking, running over a police officer, probation. I got a call from the Prince Frederick County and Calvert County telling me they had him in custody, and they told me what had happened and stuff. And I said, you know what? Let him stay there. Let him stay in custody. And they told me you got 6 hours to get here and get him, or we're coming to get you for neglect and abandonment issues. This poor father. He's a father who believes his son needs to be punished to be rescued. I want my son to get some help. I mean, if it's jail, that's what's going to take it, then it's jail. My son needs some mental help. And now he's got to pay the fines, and he's going broke doing that. So anyway, I don't know the circumstances of the family and what's happened, but at least this guy is saying, hey, if my son commits a crime against the community, you should be doing something about it. You don't just keep putting the kid out on the street on probation because you're just telling him, go ahead and do it again. You're allowing my son to be a criminal, and you're allowing the community to be hurt by my son. And I can't even stop it because you won't help me. And that's a big problem. So it really, really sad, but we're seeing that happening a lot with the juveniles these days because they're getting out of control, and our laws are getting weaker and weaker and weaker because We don't like to punish juveniles and put them in juvenile detention. I think I mentioned this last week where the kid actually had stabbed to death he was 12 years old, had stabbed to death a gas station attendant, killed him. The judge released him in the custody of his family and told him to go back to school while awaiting trial. And he hadn't even been in school in 2 years. So you know how wonderful that family was. He goes to school. They don't tell the school that he's up for murder charges, and he assaults another child viciously. And then that judge was kicked out. And the new judge said, put the kid in juvenile detention because he's dangerous to the community. So this is stuff going on. It's it's craziness. It's craziness. So anyway, that's my last story for tonight. So anyway, so I will be seeing you on Sunday for the case of the 39-year-old man who was killed, and very, very bizarre story. I'm going to send you over the link when I sent over the information on when I set up the show, because it is a 48-hour story, and it really, 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 really sad, really super sad, but very interesting. Some of the stuff is very interesting about it, which is why I'm going to talk about it. And I'm going to do a little bit of shorter show probably on Sunday. So I picked this one, and then I'm going to do the question and answer. So I'm going to take all the questions I got through all the comments on Delphi and pick out the ones I think will really help people understand what I'm talking about. And I'll do a whole show on that and put that up Sunday evening. And so I hope I do see you on Sunday for the other show, because that will be live. The one I'm doing, I'm not going to do the Delphi one live because, it's just, I'm going to put all my questions so I can put them on the screen and I can't have interruption and too much, other stuff going on. I'll get lost. I don't want other questions flying in. So I'm going to pick all the best questions I can come up with that I think people, really would like answered and don't understand. Hey, I don't know why you're saying this, or can this be true? So I'm going to answer all those questions. So I'm glad you're here. And hey, Martin, you're still awake. Oh, and you said the time changed. Oh, good. I have to check that out. I didn't look on my my iPhone to see what the time is in UK, but I'm going to check that out now. So good night, Anne. I'm glad you were here. Good night, Florence. Good night, Carrie. And good night, Lisa. And good night, Michaela. I'm glad you were all here. So yeah, I'll see you hopefully on Sunday. And if you're new to the show, please do like and subscribe. And if you'd like to be in with all these wonderful people in the community here, do join Patreon, and that helps support the channel. But if you can't do that, just subscribe. And also, if you're interested in any particular case, go to the search engine on YouTube, put in Profiler Pat Brown, and whatever case it is you're interested in, and you'll be surprised. A lot of times that case will already be there, and you don't have to ask me to do it because it's already been done. So check that out. And I'll see you guys on Sunday. Bye.